Daf Tzadi Tes Amud Aleph will begin Tzadi Ches Amud Beis, the bottom line. Continue on with the boards, the crushing of the Mishkan, and other aspects of the Mishkan. Ton Rabbanan. Charutzim hayu crushim, the crushing of the boards of the Mishkan, the boards that made up the walls of the Mishkan, the bottom of them were cut out, were chiseled. So at the bottom of them, they were chiseled around the sides and between them, so that ended up on the bottom with two prongs. There were two prongs on the bottom of the crushim. And the sockets were hollow inside. So the ends of the crushim had two pegs, two prongs, and it was inserted in the hollow of the adonim. So it looked, for instance, like if you had a plug that you plugged into a socket. The socket has two indentations, two hollow areas. The plug has two protruding areas, and it inserted into the plug. Here also, the bottom of the crushim had two pegs. They had the two tendons at the bottom, and it was inserted in the hollow of the adonim. V'nirim krosim belulois kichoim barakim, and the hooks looked like stars in the sky. There were the panels of the ureas of the curtains that they had, and these panels had two sections of 5. They were sewn together, the two put together, and they were hooks that they were hooked together. Those hooks were made out of gold, and then when they looked up, it sparkled. So when they looked up and they saw the covering of the Mishkan, it looked like they were sparkles, that there were stars in the sky. Tana Rabbanan Yeriyasu, continuing on with the curtains. Tana Rabbanan Yeriyasa Tachtain is the lower curtains, Shel Tcheles, Shel Argaman, V'Tolai Shani. They're made of blue wool, purple wool, and Tolai Shani, and scarlet wool. So they were blue and purple and red, V'Shel Sheish, and made out of linen. Vel Yonis, and the upper ones, Shel Masechet, they were made out of goat's hair. And the skill that was needed to make the upper ones, the ones out of the goat's hair, was even greater than the ones on the lower level. Why is that? Where do we see that? Regarding the bottom ones, it says that the skilled women, the women that had chachmas leiv, they spun the threads for the lower ones. But on the upper ones, on the goat hairs ones, it says it has an extra lashon over here. It says nasa liba isana. It doesn't just say chachmas leiv. The lower ones, it says Chacham Alei. The upper one says Nasa Liba Bechachma, so it has a double lashon indicating a greater Chachma that was needed for the upper ones more than the lower ones. What is that greater Chachma? V'tanya Mishum Rabbi Nechemia Shaltov Be'izim. The hair of the goat's hair was washed. Shaltov Be'izim. V'tovu Be'izim. It was washed and spun while it was still on the goat, still on the animal. They were able to, they had this great skill, this great chachma, that they were able to, while it was on the animal, wash it, spin it, and then shear it, and fabricate it into threads directly from the animal. So the Mishnah said that there are two balconies. If you pass an item from one to the other, and there's a Rishus Rabbim between them, then he's chayiv, because that was the way it was done by the Levium when they transported the crushim on the wagons when they traveled through the Midbar. As we learned before, the wagons, tachtem, the area below them, beneath them, beineim, between them, vitzideim, Rishus Rabbim. All of these areas are considered Rishus Rabbim. So, for instance, if we have the wagons, they're traveling on the road. The wagon, you have one wagon, they travel side by side. The area underneath the wagons, on the tzideim, between the wagon, each wagon, and the wheels, and between the two wagons, between the two, that whole area, all these areas are considered the Rishus Harabim. That's all part of the Rishus Harabim. Abaye says that the distance between the two wagons, they travel side by side, the distance between the two wagons corresponds to the length of a wagon. As we'll see, the length of the wagon is 5 amas. The distance between the two is 5 amas. Frag the Gemara, Sbein Gola Golorach, Kamola Oracha Gola, Kamor Hora Gola, Chomish Amas, Lamali. Why do I need a length of 5 amas? Ba'arba Upalgasagi, with 4.5 amas, it should be sufficient. As we said, they placed the kroshim, the boards, along on the wagons. So they put the length of the kroshim on the wagons. The length of the kroshim was 10 amas. The width was 1.5. Now, if they placed it on the width, on the side of the width, they would be able to make 3 piles, 1.5 amas each, a total of 4.5. So why did they need 5? Why did they need a length of 5? 4.5 should be sufficient. And even if they put it on, not on the width-wise, they put it on the thickness, the area of the thickness, which was an amma, they still couldn't put 5 piles. They can only put 4 piles because you had the tabos, the rings, that if they put it on that end, the rings protruded and they took up space. So you wouldn't be able to put 5 piles. So the chera 4.5 should be sufficient. Why does it need a length of 5? Gemara answers, so that the boards will not squeeze and press against each other. If you have 4.5, a width of 4.5 amas, you can't put it in a 4.5 amas area. You need a little bit of space, you need a little bit of room in order to put them in and remove them. So you needed 5 amas of length in order to put the kroshim, which were 4 amas plus tabos, or 4.5 amas of width, into that area. The sides of the wagon are like the width of the wagon. What was the width of the wagon? It was 2.5 amas. So we said the length of the wagon was 5. The width was 2.5. The width is 2.5. Now the sides, the area between the wagon and the wheels, was a total of 2.5. 1.25 on this side and 1.25 on this side. So you had 2.5, 1.25, 1.25. The total width from end to end was 5 amas. Frankly, Gemara, why did I need 2.5? 1.5 should have been enough. Why do I need that type of width? Even if it would be narrower, the boards could still rest on it. Why do I need to have 2.5? 1.5 should be sufficient. Now, where does this 1.5 come from? As Rashi explains, now even if you say that they took some of the boards are piled this way, even if you say that they rested some of them lengthwise, but the width of the board was 1.5. So why do I need a whole width of 2.5? More answers, so because you need more of a base to support it. The kroshim were 10 amas long. If you only had 1.5 of a width, it would totter. It wouldn't support it. You need a base of 2.5 in order to support it properly so that it doesn't fall over to the side. We say that the width of the Rishus Harabim has to be 16 amas. Ananda Garmina Lomi Mishkan. How do we know that? We learn that from the Mishkan. So if we learn from the Mishkan 15 haven. It's only the 15, not 16. As we said, you have the wagon, the width was 2.5. And you had 1.25 on the sides on each side. So the total width of the wagon from side to side, from wheel to wheel, was 5 amas. We said that between the wagons was 5 amas. So if you take it from this end, from one end of the street of the Rishus Harabim, from the wheel to wheel, it's 5. If you take the area between the wagons, it's 5. So that's 10. And then you take wagon from wheel to wheel is 5. So it's a total of 15. Where does 16 come from? The Gemara answers, there was an extra amad of a koi ben Levi dechimishtalfi kroshim of a nakatlu. There was a border, there was a shoulder of a half an amma on each side, that if the Levi who was traveling behind the wagon saw that the boards were starting to fall, to teeter, he would run to the side on the shoulder and adjust it. So therefore you had, on each side, you had a shoulder of a half an amma and a half an amma. So therefore you had half an amma. You had the total wheel to wheel of a wagon is 5, between the wagons is 5, so that's 10 and a half. Then you had from wheel to wheel is 5, is 15 and a half, and then the shoulder on the other side is a half. 16 amas was the width of the Rishus Harabim. Zok the Mishnah, Chulias Habor v'Hasela. You have the back of a bore of a pit or a rock, and they're in the Rishus Harabim. Shein Gevoyin Asar Rachman Arba. They're 10 high and 4 wide, so now they have the dimensions of Rishus HaYachid. So if one takes something from a rock, you have in the street, there's a big rock, and it's 10 high and 4 by 4. That rock has a dimension of Rishus HaYachid. If someone takes from the rock, puts it on the road, or from the road to the rock, he is transferring from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, and he's chayiv. Or if he takes from the pit, from the depth of the pit, if it's 10 deep, then, and it's 4 by 4, so then the bottom of the pit is a Rishus HaYachid. If he takes from it and puts to the top, and vice versa, he's chayiv. But if it's less than that, if it does not have it, the dimensions are smaller than that, then he's potter. It's not a Rishus HaYachid, and he's potter. Why does it say Chulias Habor v'Hasel, the bank of the bore and the rock? Why did it have to say that? Lisnei Habor v'Hasel. Why the chulia? Why do you, the point? What's the point of the chulia of the bank? If the bore is 10 deep, it's a rishus 10 and it's 4 by 4. It's a rishus HaYachid. Messiah Rav Yochanan, it's a right to Rav Yochanan, and Rav Yochanan, and he says bor v'chuliosam it's starfin lasar. It's telling you another chiddush over here. It's telling you an additional chiddush. It's telling you that the bore and the bank and the rim of the bore, it's starfin. So if you have the bore, and let's say it's not 10 deep, but then you have the rim around it, the bank around it. Let's say the depth of the bore is 7, and then you have the rim around it is 3. That is mitzaref. It combines to give you a height of 10. So if someone is at the bottom of the bore, he's looking up. He has the side walls of the bore, and then he has the bank of it. There's a wall of 10. So if somebody takes from the bottom of the bore and he takes it to the street, he's taking from the Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. It's telling you this chiddush that the rim, the bank of the bore is mitzaref to the bore. So even if the bore itself doesn't have a depth of 10, but now with combining it with the bank, now it has a total height of 10, that's a Rishus HaYachid. So therefore, it's telling you that additional chiddush that it's mitzaref. There's a machlekes rishonim. So what does that mean? So certainly it means if he takes from the bottom of the bore and he takes it to the street, that he's high. But what if he takes it from the top of the bank? Do we say the same thing of the top? The top of the bank itself, the rim itself is not 10 high. Now, from the bottom of the bore to the street, to the Rishus HaYachid, to Rishus HaRabim, because on the bottom of the bore, looking up, there's a wall of 10. But what if somebody takes from the bank itself? So that's a machlekes rishonim. Do we say just like the bottom of the bore is the Rishus HaYachid, the top is also, or do we say no? If he's chayiv to be chayiv from the bank itself, it has to be that the bank is 10 high. If the bank is not 10 high, he's not chayiv for taking from the bank. Or some say he is chayiv. And then there's a question, if the bank, a separate issue, if the bank itself is within 3 of the street, of the ground, is he also chayiv? Or there we say, if the bank is within 3, it's considered lovet part of the street. And then there's a further machlekes discussion, do we apply the same type of a chiddush to the width? And let's say the width of the bore is not 4 by 4, but if you combine the rim, the bank, to the width, now you have a width of 4. Do we say the same thing? So these are all discussions in the Rishonim. Tanya Namachi, Bor Rishus HaRabim, if there's a bor in Rishus HaRabim, Muka Sor V'Chava Arba, it's 10 deep and 4 wide, Ein Metalton and Mena B'Shabbos. You can't take from there from Shabbos, because that's a Rishus Yachid. If you're going to take the water from there to the street, you're taking from Rishus Yachid to Rishus Rabbim. You can only draw the water Elim Kain also Lemachitza Gavoya Sarat Tvachim, unless you put a wall around it of 10 Tvachim, and then the area around the bore becomes a Rishus Yachid, so it's all within a Rishus Yachid. The area then around the bore is no longer Rishus Rabbim if you make Mechitzas walls around the bore. But if it does not have a mechitza, then you can't drink from the bore unless you now bend down into the bore and your head and most of your body is within the bore. Then you're considered in the Rishus Yachid. It's not considered taking it from the Rishus Yachid to the Rishus Rabbim. And as we said before, the second chiddush, bor v'chul yosa mitztaref l'asara, and the bor and the bank are mitztaref if there's no depth of 10. The bor v'chul yosa, it combined to give a height of 10 and to make the bor to be considered Rishus Yachid.